after reading the 108-page NAR settlement agreement and spending days listening to anyone I could find online, one thing finally dawned on me. This settlement agreement does not even apply to the greater Seattle area because it only applies to multiple listing services that are owned by the National Association of Realtors. And our multiple listing, which is called Northwest Multiple Listing Service, is not even affiliated with them whatsoever. So you may wonder, hey, why not just call the folks at Multiple Listing Service and see what they have to say about all of this? So after a few tries, I was able to get a hold of their general counsel, Jeannie Simpson, and she was immensely helpful. So let's face it, there's so much misinformation out there. So today I want to share 5 key points from everything I've learned. Make sure you stick around for number 5 because I don't know why nobody's talking about this, but you will change how real estate is done forever. Hey, if you're new to this channel, welcome. My name is TC Wu. My bio includes being a real estate broker and investor for 20 plus years. I'm a state licensed real estate instructor, developer, and the owner of a property management and brokerage company. This is not financial advice or legal advice because I'm not a financial advisor or attorney. But we do have a lot to unpack, so let's go. Next, I want to talk about the legal implications specifically for Washington State. Just to make things even more confusing, we just happened to enact a new law pertaining to real estate agency this year. As of January 1st, 2024, buyer brokers must enter into a written service agreement with their respective buyers, and they must agree on the compensation to the buyer broker in writing. However, although there's some overlap, this law is very different from what we're talking about here. First, this new law left a lot of room for interpretation, such as when this service agreement is supposed to be signed. It just says as soon as reasonably possible. Second, the state law applies to all the real estate brokers in the state, whereas this commission settlement agreement only applies to specific parties named in this agreement. And since Northwest Multiple Listing is not part of it, I specifically asked their general counsel if they would even consider opting into the agreement, because that's an option here. And I was told they're not considering it, which is huge, right? And I'm gonna address this point later on in this video. So for a seller, what are the commission implications? A lot of people don't know about this, but for a seller in the greater Seattle real estate market, offering any buyer broker commission has already not been a requirement for about 5 years now. In fact, back in 2019, Northwest Multiple Listing already eliminated the requirement to publish any compensation to a buyer broker. Therefore, as a seller, you don't even need to wait till July to list your property if you want to avoid paying buyer broker commission. However, I know what you're thinking. If that's really the case, how come when you go online, you still see most sellers still offering a buyer broker commission now? And I think what you're seeing right now is a market-driven activity that is based on one belief. As a seller, do you believe that by offering 2 to 3% of your purchase price to a buyer broker, you will be getting more back in terms of having your property sell more quickly or at a higher price? If the answer is yes, then it seems like paying the buyer broker commission is worth it. And by looking at what has been happening over the past 5 years, generally speaking, it seems sellers' answer has been yes to paying a buyer broker commission. However, that sentiment is not shared by everyone. There has been a lot of debate about commission implications to buyers, and so far it's not looking good for buyers. The good thing is that we don't have to wait till July when the settlement agreement is approved by the court to find out what happens. For the new agency law commenced this year, buyer broker commission needs to be negotiated between the buyers and the buyer brokers, and that commission needs to be listed on a service agreement. There's no question about it. I mean, this change shifts additional financial burden on the buyers, and especially at a time where homes are already very unaffordable. I mean, imagine this. You're a buyer and you have worked really hard and you were able to save 20% down payment. Now, on top of everything, closing costs for lenders, escrow, and title companies, you are expected to pay even more money, and let's just say 1 to 3% of the purchase price, just to get buyer representation. And in this example, if the buyer doesn't have enough money for 20% down payment, we're talking about thousands of dollars in private mortgage insurance. Therefore, I think there's going to be a strong demand from the buyer side to have this buyer broker commission built into their price. And what does that mean? So for example, let's say a home is listed for $1 million. And it's a competitive situation, so the buyer may decide to bump up the price by how much he has agreed to pay his buyer broker. And let's just say he agreed to pay the buyer broker $10,000. So instead of offering $1 million, the buyer offers $1 million plus $10,000 to pay for the property. But in the contract, the buyer will write seller to contribute $10,000 towards the buyer broker commission. This way, the benefit for the buyer is that he's essentially saving cash in his pocket and putting essentially the closing costs into the loan. With that said, this is where things get really interesting. When I asked Northwest Multiple Listing about this, one of the solutions being discussed is that instead of publishing a buyer broker commission, we may see a field called something like seller credit towards buyer closing cost or seller concession towards buyer's broker commission. This way, the buyer is still responsible for paying their broker, but the seller is essentially giving them a credit for it. However, there's one problem with this approach is that most lenders restrict the amount of credit the buyer can receive in a transaction. And I've seen this anywhere from 6% to 9%. Therefore, this upcoming change is not just going to impact buyers, sellers, or real estate brokers, it's also going to change how loans are processed and underwritten. And in fact, a lot of the national lenders have already begun working on this issue. And I will continue to keep you posted in this channel. Please subscribe for any future updates, and also please comment and let me know what you think. Thank you for watching. I wish you well, I wish your family well, and I'll see you next time.